Welcome in. We are live with our part 2 of the Postseason Fantasy Football show. This is our DGAF episode. As promised, I brought back fellow league mates Grant and Jake for the Vampire Fantasy Football Forum podcast. And we're live here. Fellas, it is postseason. And I know we are still kind of all trying to figure out what happened with the end of the fantasy season. Never ended the way we wanted because in some leagues it was a tie, and that was the case technically and how it voted out in our league at home. In other leagues, it was use week 18. Some leagues decided, hey, we're just going to end it here, and that's you really have no clear decision, but still a fun season as always. That's why we play it every year. We're degenerates that way. We go back to it every year. Now, last time I had you guys on, we were looking at the semifinal match, which Jake, you and I were sparring against each other, and that really wasn't a fair fight, according to what the score was at the end, because your team decided to lay an egg that week, and that's not really a good week to lay an egg. So
that was predictable, though. I was laying eggs every other week, and it was that turn. It was that time of.
It was time for an egg.
I was high. I was on point with high, low every other week, and the week before I scored high, and it was just I kind of already knew that was going to happen.
Well, I will say you snuck into the playoffs, and the way our league is set up, the final spot in the league is determined by most points scored, and that. For everybody that's listening, Jake beat Grant out by 10 points. So he got the final spot in the league with, much like the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in the real playoffs, a losing record. And was able to make it to the semis. So he made it past wild card. So that's better than Tom Brady and the Bucs. So you did better than them. I will say that.
That's right. That's right.
Now, I'm going to bring out something that we talked about slightly, and I did not highlight this enough the last time we were on. And last time I showed my screen, we were kind of going through teams, and I didn't really point out the behind the scenes of what my team name was called. And so I'm going to bring that out now. You guys can tell me if I'm full of it or not. But I was actually listening to the Kelce podcast the other day, and Travis Kelce was talking about, I think it was about the Raiders game, but he mentioned the nickname, the Yeti, and his brother Jason was giving a little crap about, do you ever shave the Yeti? And I'm assuming, because I've never met Mr. Travis Kelce, that he is probably a little bit hairier, so that's probably what he's referring to. But I'm going to point out to Mr. Travis Kelce, too, that a Yeti is actually not a fair nickname for him, because while he plays in Kansas City and lives in Kansas City, that is not the coldest place to play. So he's not really going out in the cold all the time. Also, a Yeti only comes out really when people don't want to see. He kind of hides away. Again, I don't think that accurately describes one Mr. Travis Kelce for the Kansas City Chiefs. My team was aptly named after the draft pick of Mr. Travis Kelce on my team. And that's the nickname that I had for him. And that is Mr. Vanilla Godzilla. And unlike the Yeti, who only comes out where it's cold and who only comes out when he doesn't want to be seen, a Godzilla destroys what's in his path. He is out there wreaking havoc. And that is what Travis Kelce does to opposing teams. He'll go to an opposing stadium and destroy the stadium down while he's catching 4 or 5 touchdowns a game. And he destroys a team's will. Go ask any AFC West opponent, namely the Raiders and or the Chargers this year. The Chargers just couldn't stop him. He laid waste to that team both times that they played. So I wanted to highlight that a little bit more of that should be Mr. Travis Kelce's nickname is the Vanilla Godzilla, because he destroys that which gets in his path. So you guys tell me if I'm a little crazy on that or not, but I wanted to bring that up first before we get into this.
No, it's a great name. And I mean, there's a whole segment. We could do a whole hour segment on Travis Kelce, his ADP next year, what he does, percentage of championship teams that had them on their roster, yada yada, right? So yeah, it's undeniable that he's first round pick this next year, right? And you could argue like if he, you could argue first pick, fifth pick, whatever. I mean, he's going to the first round next year.
Oh yeah, he should have. He's the guy that should have gone the first. Yeah, he should have gone the first this year.
Yeah,
but so. Well, this week, obviously, no regular season to look forward to for fantasy football. That is, we still have divisional round playoffs yet to come. But instead of looking forward like we did in the season, let's kind of do a little reflecting and let's have some fun. Again, like I said, this is our DGAF episode, so have some fun with this. But as you kind of reflect over the fantasy football season, and overall, it was a fun season, I think. But so Grant, we'll start with you, and then Jake, you'll get you chime in. What was one of the biggest things you guys think you learned this year as you maybe think about next year and other fantasy years?
So I think for me, it was evaluating running back talent. In years past, there's been a more consistent hierarchy of running backs in the league. It's been, you've had the Le'Veon Bells, and you've had, in the past, you've had the Frank Gores, you've had, all these studs where, like Ezekiel Elliott, right? A great example. Like these RB1s that like this is the guy for the team, you pick him, you're done. Coaches, I think, it started last year and it happened a lot this year. Running back by committee, the horror phrase that you hear throughout fantasy football, but it was really true this year where a lot of the winning teams went RB0, or they picked the highly rated studs like the Derrick Henrys, Christian McCaffreys, and then picked receivers after that, and then picked up the Josh Jacobs type of players later. And I think for me, that's something that I need to work on for next year for my drafting is I picked up like ETN. I had ETN trade to you, Jeff, of course, so you're welcome for that. And also trade away Jacobs. So for me, I think I need to kind of understand trends with running backs and basically how these players are trending in the first few weeks of the season and later on. I think I was too quick to get rid of some of these rookies and younger players, and it bit me in the butt big time. So that's kind of my takeaway is understand talent, kind of understand more of running back hierarchy and the depth charts and whatnot a little more than just like set it and forget it and go, because that's kind of what did me in. And my team would have done better if I had kind of evaluated that properly.
Sure.
Right.
That's good.
To your point on that, like that trade with Josh Jacobs.
Yeah, I'm sure you do. Kyler Murray ACL or whatever he had, and ACL and hamstring injuries for Josh Jacobs. Yeah, it was great for you.
Yeah, you should have put together about Warzone 2 coming out and all that. But
that's right.
Josh Jacobs, that took me by surprise too. I did not go after him because I thought he was going to be some middle of the season comeback king. I thought he was just a well-rounded. He gets tons of touches. It was just going to be depth for me, honestly. It was a fair trade in my eyes. I did not go after him thinking this is going to be a second half or a second season, blowout player, which he was. I just didn't. I had that blew my mind too. I just came up big with that one. But I'd say my biggest, kind of connected to what you're saying about the running back committee. When we play with one of the biggest things that I need to fix and look at is we played with 3 wide receivers, and that screwed me bad. Because I went running back heavy as I usually do, because running backs, they get hurt, and then there seems to be a shortage of them as the season goes on, and everyone's fighting to get a decent one. So I went more running back heavy, and it left me pretty desolate on the wide receiver, like pretty bad. Terry McLaurin was probably my best one, and he really didn't start taking off till at least the second half of the season. All the rest of my wide receivers were just hit and miss, mostly miss. And it wasn't until I made that trade for Diggs that that addressed one. I'm still sitting with 2 wide receiver slots after Diggs that I couldn't hardly ever get going. It was a guess who on my lineup's going to go off this week. Oh wait, you're wrong again.
Mm-hmm.
So if I had to do this over again, combined with what you were saying, Grant, about the running back committee, it being a lot, it is quite difficult now to determine. You have your select few running back studs, McCaffrey, Derrick Henry, Eckler, some of those guys, but with having 3 wide receiver slots, though, man, you got to take a wide receiver in the first or second. I don't see how you're going to get around that, or you're going to miss out.
Right.
Yeah.
I'll say it kind of threw us, like, this was the first year in our home league too that we went 2 quarterbacks, so that kind of changed the landscape a little bit of everything too.
That did, yeah.
I think the biggest thing I learned, or my biggest take back of this season, is during draft process. In the preseason and the off season, we like to see where everything's kind of shifted. What is the situation with each team, and kind of say, okay, I'm going to predict what I think each team's going to do based on their situation. And I think that kind of bleeds into our evaluation of where to draft certain players in fantasy football. Do I draft a player higher because he has a better situation versus another one? I think one that comes to mind would be, I don't want to take DK Metcalf or Tyler Lockett because Seattle's potentially a dumpster fire. Got rid of Russell Wilson, got rid of that. So the situation's bad, so I'm not going to draft them as high. And let's say on the flip side, Cortland Sutton, Jerry Jeudy, I may draft them higher because the situation is a lot better. Where I think we over-evaluate situation in the preseason and in draft season, where we should look at talent of players. So, Tyreek Hill's another one where, we went to Miami. He's not going to be as good or as productive because he's not with Pat Mahomes anymore. He has Tua Tagovailoa. It's not going to be as good of a season. Devontae Adams now doesn't have Aaron Rodgers. He has Derek Carr. So, but the talent of the player, the athleticism of the player talent is actually still there. So there are certain players that they have a good enough talent, they're good enough athletes that they can overcome a worse situation but still be very productive fantasy wise. So that's one thing I took back of, not to over inflate situation and take player athleticism, player talent a little bit more heavily related than just situation. That was the biggest thing for me.
Mm-hmm. That's a good point.
But I mean, this is a thing we're always learning.
That is a good point. Devontae Adams is kind of another example of that. I didn't think he was going to be much of anything for the Raiders. I thought he was just going to be held back. I know he's talented, but just like Tyreek going to Miami, excuse me, I knew there was going to be a drop off, but I haven't looked at the numbers for Devontae Adams, but it seemed like he started off slow and then just took off pretty quick.
Yeah, he was one that definitely took off. So speaking of talent and players and talent, so Jake, this year, who would be your choice for fantasy football MVP?
Probably Kelce.
Kelce?
Yeah, I'd probably say Kelce. Nobody matched that.
Right.
That's Mr. Consistent and high points, and I don't get hurt ever. It's crazy.
It is crazy. Grant?
I'd have to go Travis Kelce this year.
Travis Kelce for that, for fantasy football MVP. Grant, fantasy football
Man.
MVP.
Yeah, I honestly got to agree with Jake on that. I wish I could have a different opinion, but I mean, in the tight end wasteland, I mean, before the season, it was him, Andrews, Kittle, and
Yep.
Kittle was injured, came back with Purdy
Right.
and did well at the end, but Andrews got
Yeah.
hurt after like week 5 or something. I mean, if you
Yeah.
had, I mean, it was Kelce was, I can't remember what the average was at the end. I think it was like 17.8 fantasy points he was averaging in 1 point
Something like
PPR.
that, yeah.
So it just
That's
something like that. It's
insane.
insane.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
That's
insane.
insane.
And it's not even it's a stable person in the position, but the leading receiver on a team for a tight end, it's just crazy. I mean,
Yeah.
there were lots of other factors, but I did feel like though the rest of the positions, like the receivers, running backs, kickers, defenses, quarterbacks. I mean, there were some rookies like Justin Fields who I thought kind of overperformed and did better than I was thinking. But
Right.
for the most part, there wasn't anybody that was like, wow, like, a James Conner when Le'Veon sat out, was it 3 years ago, where he
Right.
just took off. And I mean, there were some of those players who exceed expectations and fell. But for the most part, I thought Kelce was just by far the biggest MVP. If you didn't have Kelce on your team, if you sat him for some reason, like it just changed your team completely.
Oh, dude,
Right.
Kelce was a big reason why you went to the championship round. I mean,
Oh yeah.
What a nice player to have to make up for maybe one or two of your guys that don't put out or something. I mean,
Right.
just consistently.
He was the one that allowed me not to have a top tier wide receiver and not feel it as much.
Yep.
Because he produced that.
Right.
I'll give a different take.
Right.
I'll say, because in non 2 QB leagues, Josh Jacobs would be my fantasy football MVP, because he was one average draft position. He was drafted pretty much like 4th round, so he was going in the same range as like Travis Etienne or certain other guys. But you look at the guys that went around him, and I think, depending on when you drafted, Mike Evans may have been going around there anyway too, or even like DK Metcalf fell to the 4th round in a lot of leagues. Right. They did not put out the same as Josh Jacobs. And if you were a team that drafted him, he was typically your second running back. So you have, typically 2 running backs, and the second one you got in the 4th round, and he's over expectation, but that was just a guy that was a true, I got fair value, more than fair value, but you got 1st round draft quality from your 4th round pick. Right. So that'd be my choice for MVP.
I can't argue against him. When I got him and he started going off, that's really what enabled me to sell or trade a Saquon Barkley for Diggs. So I felt Josh Jacobs turn immediately to an RB1. So and that was kind of out of nowhere. But
so Grant, then I'll let you go first. Then on the opposite side of talent, we have the least talented ones. So fantasy football least valuable player this year.
Fantasy football least valuable player.
Oh man.
Hi, yikes. Okay, so quarterback. I think so. I wouldn't say necessarily least valuable, but most disappointing quarterback, I would have to say, was probably Justin Herbert. Just because, not so much of like actual numbers, but because of where you drafted him. It was literally this clump of, if you're in 1 QB league, going for that, you had Mahomes, you had Josh Allen, and then you had Justin Herbert, like all right there. Maybe Hurts sprinkled in there with some of the more knowledgeable leagues, but you drafted Justin Herbert pretty high, and like he would throw for a lot of yards, but there'd be a fumble, a couple of interceptions, whatever it was.
Right.
He had all of his receivers hurt for basically the whole year instead of the last 3 or 4 weeks of the season. And there wasn't a lot of touchdowns. It all went to Eckler. And so it just was over. I think he finished like QB 12 or 11, and you really drafted him Yeah, you drafted him top 3 or 4. And in terms of, I mean, I'll let you guys, if you have a running back or receiver, I'll let you guys jump in, so I'll hog the whole thing.
Yeah, Jake. So your LVP for this year.
Well, so to kind of define LVP, I'm also going to go with someone someone you drafted maybe way earlier and didn't get the value out of them, least value. I don't know, but I'm going to probably have to say Jonathan Taylor.
Okay.
Yeah,
he was drafted like probably most drafts as the 1 or 2 or 3 pick. Definitely as an RB1, and I believe he finished somewhere in like the RB 27 or 8 range or something like that. That's pretty bad. That would be very that's a wrecked season right there. If I was going to go quarterback, maybe like probably Trey Lance. I know a lot of people believe in Trey Lance and drafted him, and 49ers were going to be on fire with him, and he was going to be, that's probably not as big of a disappointment because, there was still a question mark, but he didn't even play really hardly at all. So that was pretty much a complete bust.
I was he had his ankle injury. So, but
right.
Again,
I'll quickly jump back. So I think quarterback, I was compared to draft position. I think for running back, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, just because of the shift in the backfield, I think a lot of people drafted him in because of the offense, somewhere in the 3 to 5 to 6 draft pick range. I think he ended up 46th, 47th top running back. And it's deceiving because it wasn't like he was consistently pulling 7 or 8 points. He had 15, 16, 17, 20-point games the first 5 weeks of the season. And then Pacheco comes in and just slowly, you see the life siphoning out of the fantasy points of CEH and going to Pacheco. And so, I mean, he was droppable. Like week 12, 13, you're dropping Clyde Edwards-Helaire, your fifth, sixth draft pick. I mean, I dropped him in our league, right? Like I just dropped him because it was like he was getting no points.
He didn't even have enough value to trade. Not even no one even wanted it.
You dropped him, and no one picked him up. Like he sat on the bench. Like you dropped him. So that was tough because that was like a lot of draft picks. It's on my bench, like a Mike Evans. Like he had some good games, some bad games, and he had a big stretch in the middle that was bad. But like CEH was, you just dropped him after a point, which was, it just hurt your soul, right? Because you're like, I could have picked a DK Metcalf, I could have picked a Josh Jacobs, and you just straight up pick some guy who after 5 or 6 weeks was giving you nothing.
Right.
So I'm gonna say, because I was trying to think about this, and there's a lot of injuries this year. So trying not to think of guys that got hurt early or may have had injury kind of derail their season, because I kind of take injuries aside of, okay, it wasn't performance based, but it was injury based.
I got you.
Like Breece Hall. It's not Breece Hall's.
Right.
He was doing great until the injury. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So my LVP would actually be Kyle Pitts. And I'm trying to remember if he actually got injured. But Kyle Pitts, once again, Kyle Pitts was touted as he's a generational talent, just like he was coming out of the draft. I'm not going to say he's not, but he was talked about in the same tier as Kelce, Andrews, Kittle, like them. This is the guy that finishes out that tier. Kittle had some disappointment just because he was injured, and then he came on later in the season. Andrews had disappointment, again, injured. Kelce just dominated the whole tight end wasteland, as we all know. But Pitts, once again, and it can be situation, it can be whatever, but Drake London had a decent target share, and he was actually semi-consistent with his production in that offense, where if you had Kyle Pitts, even in the tight end wasteland, you may have thought about, well, who's off the waiver wire that I can go get? Well, I spent probably a 3rd or 4th round pick on in most leagues of he's probably maybe the 4th tight end taken off the board. Sometimes maybe more, depending on how much you wanted him or not. So Kyle Pitts would be mine this year.
And here, a little tidbit on Kyle Pitts. So he finished tight end 33 for the year. So in week 13, he got injured, went on the IR, he was done.
Right.
Finished tight end 33 this year. And guess what? Last year in PPR, 6th in his rookie year. So everyone was hyped on it. In a tight end wasteland, everybody's like, well, obviously he's had a year, and you have, at the time, Calvin Ridley was still, the whole game winning thing happened, he got suspended and got traded and all that stuff. But like, he was still going to play, he was going to come back. Like, the hype was real for Kyle Pitts to do well in a traditionally bad defensive team, throwing lots of balls. Like, it was going to be great. You've got Mariota, who's going to do a lot of short passes, dink and dunks. Tight ends are perfect for that. He's a big target. Yeah, it was a complete fail. Like, it was. I didn't draft him in any of my leagues, thankfully, but yeah, I mean, after a few, and he would. The problem is he would post like 3 to 4 point games. It was like 3 points, 5 points, 4 points. So like, what are you gonna do? Are you gonna drop him for another guy, another tight end that's gonna score the same amount? So you just kept him in. So you were stuck.
Right.
You were stuck with him.
In my dynasty league, I made an offer move for Kyle Pitts. Mm-hmm. I offered Darren Waller, and I think a draft pick, and maybe another small player. I don't remember. It was a pretty good chunk, and the guy thought about it for like 3 days and decided to hold on to him. And I'm so glad.
Yeah, you got lucky there.
Wow. I mean, I bought the hype. I mean,
Now is the time to buy Kyle Pitts, though. Now is the time, because his stock just got even lower. So dynasty-wise, and now is the time to go get him.
Oh, he's going to draft late next year.
Probably. You say that, but I'm gonna call it now. May, June, July. It's gonna come, and we're gonna start hearing about his talent again, and whether they bring Mariota or if it's Ritter or whoever's quarterback. Oh, look, they have such a good connection. Look at this sweet catch that he made in training camp. Just look how athletic he is. He's never felt better. He's so strong. Yeah. He's so ready to go.
Yep.
All right. Yeah, we heard all that last year too. So, okay.
Yeah.
Again, situation over talent, which in this case, Kyle Pitts has talent.
Yep.
What are the pieces that we're not? Yeah. Speaking of draft season next year, so Jake, in your estimation, who is a player that will be drafted way too early? The ADP is just going to skyrocket, and he's going to jump the shark. Who's going to be overdrafted next year?
Overdrafted? Man, it'd be nice to have a list in front of me. Overdrafted, man. So this is I don't have any evidence off this, really. I just got a hunch. I have a hunch that Dalvin Cook. Yeah, I have a speculation that Dalvin Cook is going to be drafted higher than what he's going to produce, and I feel like he's going to get taken over by Alexander.
By Madison?
Maybe Madison, maybe even traded. I don't know.
Could be. Because Cook's probably a first-round pick.
I don't think he's worth a first-round pick. I think that's over. That's I think he's more of a third.
Okay.
At least, and that's not a huge take. That's I don't. Maybe I'll think of another one here next couple minutes.
I mean, think about it, but I don't think that's that's kind of a bold call, but you think about his age. He is at the age where he's over that. Yeah. He's getting to the point where production's going to start going down, but he also carries a name where you hear Dalvin Cook. He has been a top producing running back in years past. So we're kind of getting at this point where we have a bunch of running backs coming up to the age apex of like, okay, we're kind of going to be slowing down, but they've been super productive. They've been top level guys. Now they're going to start falling off. So you're still going to have the thought process of, well, it's still this guy, but do I want to take the chance that he is now not that guy and maybe switch to, a younger running back that, go for an ETN, go for a Brees Hall, depending on how go for a J.K. Dobbins, who's a year off of ACL, MCL, surgery that steps up, that's younger, that may see more production. So, Grant, same question. Who's a player that will be overdrafted next year?
So this is a little bit of a hot take, I guess, for me. I think Travis Etienne overdrafted. Okay. And why is James Robinson was healthy, had a muscle tear. I think Etienne is good. I think he's a great player. I think if I had to guess, Doug Peterson has never been, if you think about with the Eagles and everything, he has always leaned on other running backs. So even with Miles Sanders, he had brought in a whole bunch of veterans, other people to help supplement. Even before, he's done stuff with running backs to relieve the stress, which I think is what the trend is going for right now with coaches. Right. Like, why are you going to put all the stress on one guy? He gets injured, So I think Robinson's going to come back. I think Etienne's hot. He's a hot ticket. I think Etienne's going to go, it depends on the league, right? But, I think he's going to go no later than the second or third, I think, based upon his production with the Jaguars. Young quarterback, So I think he's going to have 5th to 6th round production from a running back. I think James Robinson's going to come back, going to fight for the job, and the Jags backfield's going to be a committee. And you're going to see 7-8 points a game from Etienne. That's my hot take.
I think for Etienne, because I love Etienne as a player. Obviously, I traded for him this year, and I think he has the potential.
I like that take.
Yeah, I think it's a good take because I think the last things we remember about football players is playoff games. We see what happened in playoff games. Last year, the guy that was overdrafted this year was because of a playoff performance was Gabe Davis. He had 4 touchdowns against Kansas City. He had over 200 yards. He blew up that game. Oh, look, see what Gabe Davis is going to do. Doesn't mean he's not a good player, but he's more that boom bust guy where you want him as a wide receiver 3, not drafting him as a wide receiver 2 or so like he was, going this year. So my guy, Jake, I'm going to kind of take a little bit of what you did, but I don't think it's quite as bold. I don't think it's bold as either of yours, but I think he's going to be overdrafted because this guy will probably be in the first round where he's going to be drafted. Again, he's an aging running back who he has talent. I'm not saying any of these guys are not talented because they're a lot more talented at playing football than I am. And they're very athletic, but I think Joe Mixon is going to be overdrafted next year. And I think the arguments you're going to hear are, well, look at his points per game. If you look at his points per game, he had pretty good production points per game. Now, none of us had Joe Mixon on our teams this year, but I think what we'll forget is the 1 week of 6 touchdowns and just super productive, whereas before he just was falling off a cliff. And Samaje Perine comes in after he gets injured and is actually outperforming him if you look stats wise. So we're going to hear points per game that, he finished as the running back, whatever it was, points per game. So, he still has it. He hasn't lost it. I think he's a little bit overdrafted then at that point in time.
Right.
I think so.
So
that's good. I like that. There's one more player I want to mention. I want to see what you guys think about this. That I think is going to be overdrafted. Not saying he's not going to be still valuable in fantasy, but I think he's going to be a little bit overdrafted by name and what he's done the last few seasons. Okay. And that's Cooper Kupp. I think Cooper Kupp takes a dip.
So there's a saying that I've heard somebody...
I don't know if it's because of his injury, his injuries for himself have been coming, but also the quarterback issues going on. And honestly, that whole team in general, which by the way was one of the biggest surprises to me this year, to see the LA Rams just take a shit. Like I don't know. I don't know what they were thinking. What happened to them, like so quickly.
The injury bug. They took the Chargers doctors and got the injury bug.
They did. Oh gosh.
But
That's fun.
yeah, I could see that. Now, him only having a high ankle sprain, I think it's going to depend on what all happens with the Rams. And I've just gone on a talk about how we shouldn't evaluate situation. I think you have to understand what situation with each team is. Is Matthew Stafford healthy? Is he back throwing? If not, who's the quarterback then? Because while guys can overcome a situation, it doesn't mean there's a good saying that I've heard somebody talk about on podcasts. They say, I don't hate players, I hate ADP. So I may like Cooper Kupp as a player, but if he's going to go 5th overall, I may not like that. So I don't want him because I don't value him that high. Doesn't mean he's not a high level player or person or football player that I'd like to have my roster, but I don't want to pay the price tag that somebody else is willing to. So
right.
So Grant, we're gonna switch it up a little bit. Jake, I'll give you a little bit of time to think on this one now because Grant had the time to think last time. But who will be a player that's underdrafted, meaning should be drafted higher, but based on just what people think about him or don't think about him, who's going to be underdrafted next year?
So for me, I think for I think for quarterback, that's definitely somebody to talk about. It's a whole conversation about that guy. But I think for running back,
we have another show about that
Tony
guy.
Pollard. Tony Pollard's
Tony
my
Pollard.
pick.
I like that. Yep.
And the reason why I said Tony Pollard, if you look at the tape, you look at all the stuff. Dallas's offensive line is great. It's not as good as it's been the last few years. It doesn't take a crazy running back to do well with Dallas's offensive line.
Sure.
But you look at what Pollard's done compared to Elliott. He's more explosive. He catches more out of the backfield. But in everyone's mind, and Jerry Jones says this himself, Zeke's the main guy, right? We pay Zeke. He's the guy getting paid. He's the guy on our team. He's our guy, blah, 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 all this stuff. So I think a lot of people see Pollard still as the handcuff to Zeke. To me, honestly, if Pollard comes to me, I'm going to take him, right? And I would probably take him over Zeke because he's younger. There's also the chance that Pollard, we don't know how the situation in Dallas is with, the contracts and what Jerry feels and how Zeke feels. And there's a whole bunch of drama I'm sure will happen in the offseason. But Pollard has the opportunity to be a starter somewhere or be the handcuff / second guy to Zeke. And I mean, in our dynasty league that I went to the championship with, Jeff, like I started both of them. I had Zeke and Pollard. I just started them both with my RB1, RB2, and they would score me 30, 40 points a game. So that's someone I think who is going to slip, who probably has second to third round production that is probably going to be, again, 4th, 5th, 6th round because of backup status.
Oh, I like it.
Yeah, I like that.
Jake, who do you think should be underdrafted?
I mean, I was kind of serious about Tom Brady, but that is a big if he gets let's for example, say he goes to the Raiders.
Okay.
I think he's going to have wherever if he plays again, wherever he ends up, he's going to have a lot more talent than what he had this year. And I think they're going to be able to elevate him, which is kind of what he needs now. He doesn't elevate other players. Other talented players elevate him now. But I think his mind, his quarterback mind, is still relevant. He's a winner.
Yeah.
He can read every defense thrown at him. So you set him up with a good offensive line and some studs. He's making things happen. And after this year, and I had Tom Brady, big disappointment, almost unplayable most of the time.
Right.
I mean, the only reason why I did play him because I didn't have better options. But I think if he gets traded or if he goes to another team, which I think that's a good possibility, I don't think he's done. It's only going to be to a winning team, to a team that maybe really the biggest piece they're missing is a quarterback, and they got talent surrounding him. And I think people are going to not draft him in fantasy till way later just because of what he did this year. He's too old. He's, and all that. But I think he's going to put up numbers. I think it's going to be different than this year.
It'll always be different. Just we'll see, is it better or worse?
Right?
Hard to
That's
get
my
worse
bold
from
take,
this
by
year,
the way.
though. There you go. It's interesting, yeah, because I don't think he stays in Tampa. We can have a whole show on the quarterback carousel some other time.
Yeah,
That'll
true.
be a whole topic conversation there. I've got a few names floating around in my head who I think is going to be underdrafted, but I think I'm going to go with J.K. Dobbins is going to be underdrafted next year.
Yeah.
So he was coming off a horrific 2 years ago because I drafted him, and 2 days later he does this. He tears both his ACL and MCL. Like, he just mangles that knee. And so that happened preseason, obviously. But he had some complications with surgery during the offseason. He had some just extended time trying to get back to what he felt. And this was his first year back from that. And obviously he didn't play very much this year. And when he did, it just didn't look like himself. If you just watched him, it just didn't look like he was himself. As the season progressed, though, and this is where the Ravens not going further in the playoffs, we don't get to see this more now, but as the season progressed, he got better. And you could just see that trust starting to build. But I think at that point in time, it's too little too late. We're going to look at points per game. We're going to look at just his overall production and say when he was in, he wasn't much better than Gus Edwards. He wasn't much better than, whoever was that was running the ball. So therefore, I'm not going to draft him as high. But I think that's going back to, okay, typically with ACL tears, if you give a player a year after it, now there are exceptions to the rule, but typically if you go a year after an injury, the production ramps back up. Talent actually prevails in that situation. So I'm going to say Dobbins because I think he kind of goes in the Tony Pollard range where maybe it's a third round, fourth round. And I mean, the Ravens like to run the ball. And they have a whole lot going on the offseason with Lamar Jackson and all that. So we'll see what happens. But I think Dobbins is going to be a little undervalued.
I would totally agree with you on that one, actually.
All right, let's switch over to some real football. And we kind of, in our group chat, gave our upsets of wildcard weekend. And I think the only one that ended up being correct was the call of the Giants over the Vikings. So good call there. My call of Tampa Bay actually upsetting the Cowboys. It was far-fetched, but I knew it was. So that's okay.
Right.
But, we have, 4 teams in the AFC and 4 teams in the NFC left. So we're down to the final 8. So in your mind, based on the 8 teams left in the playoffs, who would be your best or your favorite, the Super Bowl match that you want to see? What is that Super Bowl match that you want to see versus maybe what's the Super Bowl matchup that the ratings want to see?
Personally, I bet you my matchup would probably match up with the ratings. That's Cowboys versus Chiefs.
Okay.
I think that would be a lit Super Bowl. I don't
Cowboys
think
Chiefs would be the worst nightmare for all of America except for Cowboys and Chiefs fans. It's like literally the worst nightmare. It's like Lakers Yankees in some cross hybrid sport.
Well, I mean, yeah, Eagles fans aren't going to be too thrilled about that. I believe nobody's going to get hit with their beer. So
I think Cowboys and Chiefs would be the Super Bowl of bandwagons because you have the bandwagon of the Cowboy fan
awful.
since the '90s
Yeah.
versus the bandwagon of Patrick Mahomes. Now, I think it'd be an entertaining game, but
yeah,
I think it. So right now, I guess my favorite's probably still the Chiefs to win the AFC. I am the Bengals though. Like, here's the deal. I think if the Bengals can beat the Bills, the Chiefs are gonna have a really hard time in the AFC Championship game. The Bengals just don't match up well. The only hope is because the Bengals have some injured offensive linemen, they can put some pressure on Burrow finally. But if they can't get pressure on Burrow, the Chiefs are sunk. But I think Super Bowl matchup, I think it's going to be 49ers versus the Chiefs and a rematch. It's going to be a great narrative for the media and for America, right? It's going to be this whole rematch situation. It's going to be Mr. Irrelevant versus Mr. Fanboy, right? And it's going to be like this, because that's how it is right now, right? Like if you're a young fan who likes football, you like Pat Mahomes and stuff, and Mr. Irrelevant is a great arc. This is a great story arc, similar to what Brady did in 2001 in New Orleans in that Super Bowl, right? With the Rams, right? The greatest show on turf, and he came in and beat him as a backup, right?
Yep.
So I think that's who my bet is, just because Purdy, he has the secret sauce. They have yet to score under 30 points a game since he started. It's been insane.
Yeah.
Like he's got it, man. Like he's got the sauce, and that's why I don't think Brady goes to the 49ers, because I think they're going to roll with Purdy next year.
Right.
Guy is that's a whole conversation, right, about the QB carousel, but like Purdy looks really good. The 49ers offense is just full of talent. Like you're not going to see, if there's a matchup like that, you're not going to see the Chiefs beat them 44-23 like they did earlier in the year with Jimmy. Right. I don't see that happening. But that's my matchup. My matchup is 49ers Chiefs.
Okay. I mean, it's no secret we're all Chiefs fans here because, Grant, yes, you're out in California, but Jake, you and I both live where Chiefs fans is predominant. Now we also have some stray Broncos and Cowboys fans and Raiders fans trickle in here every once in a while too, so we have to deal with all that riffraff. But so I actually think the one I want to see is going to be different from what I think the media narrative is going to be for what they want to see. The one I want to see is Chiefs Eagles, because I want to see, it's a storyline. It's a great storyline too of Eagles have obviously had a great run. Can they overcome the Jalen Hurts late season injury? Can they get back to the Super Bowl since Doug Peterson led them there? But then on the flip side of that, you have Andy Reid, who used to coach the Eagles, led them to a Super Bowl, lost, and then was then let go and picked up by Kansas City, where he has won a Super Bowl. And can he beat his former team to win a second one? That'd be the one I would want to see. I think the most fun one would probably be Chiefs Cowboys, or Chiefs Niners, just because there's playmakers everywhere. You could also have a lot of fun with, honestly, any of the Bengals, Chiefs, or Bills, because there's so much talent on those three teams.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
The one that I think would get the most ratings is if you went Bills and either Niners or Cowboys. Okay, because you take go. I would say you take the two powerhouses in the 90s, or the three, because on the AFC side, the Bills made it to the Super Bowl 4 straight years and lost. They've been there, they lost so many times. And they've been so close for so many years now with Josh Allen. But then on the flip side, you have the powerhouse of the Cowboys in the 90s versus the Niners that were a powerhouse before them. They're back to doing those things. So you put that together in the Super Bowl, you have that 2 historic franchises or 3, whichever one ends up. But those franchises get into the Super Bowl and making it relevant again.
Yeah.
Cowboys, so in terms of maxing out all media, like just maxing it out, I think you have to go Cowboys. So you looked at like a chart of the top 10 most watched games. 6 of them are Cowboys games, right? So you immediately go there. Then I think for the AFC, probably just because of the Chiefs being more popular, I think Cowboys Chiefs probably maxes out the ratings because Bills, they're great, but they also too are from Buffalo. It's a smaller market. It's not the Giants or the Jets or the Commanders. So something like that. So it'd be a fun game. I'm gonna we'll see. I'm gonna probably make ill-advised financial decisions if the Chiefs go to that game. So it's gonna be bad.
Yeah, that might be. Well, as far as my prediction, as far as realistically, can we do that? Can we do a prediction real quick?
Do a prediction.
Sure. Realistic. All right. I think the Bills are going to send the Bengals home this weekend, and I think the Chiefs are going to scrape by a hard, tough game against the Jags. I don't think they're going to blow them out. I think it's going to be closer than people think it's going to be.
Sure.
The Chiefs are going to play the Bills and send the Bills home. The Chiefs are going to go to the Super Bowl. I think Andy Reid and Pat Mahomes and everything they got going, I don't think there's a team that's going to stop them this time. On the other side, the 49ers are going to the Super Bowl. There's no way they're not. There's no team going to beat them.
Yeah, they're stacked.
They're gonna beat the brakes off the Cowboys this weekend, and then they're gonna go, and then they're gonna go smack the Eagles bad. They're gonna smack them hard, and they're gonna go to the Super Bowl. And honestly, if trying to pick a winner between the Chiefs and the 49ers without using my emotions, I'm leaning 49ers. They're so good. They can control the clock. Christian McCaffrey is a freak. They can control the clock with their run game, and they got a quarterback that can throw. They got playmakers on the other side. That's tough, man. 49ers look disgusting. So, 49ers Chiefs.
I can't argue that. I think this week, Monday night, we saw Dallas play probably one of the best games that they've played. This is something that we wanted to see Dallas do all year long, and they have done it on occasion. So I think this week Dallas does not play as well because they just got done playing a good game. They had a good game. They obviously did that. They were able to overcome beating Tom Brady, which apparently the narrative for that game was Tom Brady's never lost to the Cowboys. That had nothing to do with the game, though. But I think because they had such a good game on Monday, they're going to not have such a good game against the Niners. The story with the Niners, Grant, you already alluded to it. Brock Purdy has vibes of Tom Brady. He's, Mr. Irrelevant, very late round pick. Nobody wanted him.
Last pick. Literally last pick.
Yeah, literally. So he is Mr. Irrelevant there versus Tom Brady was the 7th round. But is he able to, because of the weapons around him, is he able to go out and just keep performing the way he has? Obviously, the weapons elevate him, and he's making plays. So he's doing what he is supposed to do. So it's honestly props to him. But we are seeing a short sample size. So does that continue, or does he fall off a cliff? Now, his college resume, his college, playing career. He played at Iowa State. He was very up and down, but he played against tough opponents. He saw struggles. He saw failure there. That kind of prepared him for this. So there's a chance he is kind of that. I'm not going to say Tom Brady archetype for career, but he's more than what people give him credit for. So I could see definitely him doing a lot more than what Jimmy Garoppolo has done. He already has.
Yes.
But so I could see him leading the Niners to Super Bowl. They're set up for it.
Yeah.
The biggest question mark is it going to last? And so that's where it's like, I don't know how much you just, until it doesn't, happen, you just kind of got to trust that he's going to keep doing this until he just shows he's not going to. So we'll see.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, I think the 49ers, though, they're so talented on both sides of the ball. Credible defense, talent on offense. I think you stick any quarterback. I will argue any quarterback that started week 1 in this league, they go to the playoffs. They might not do as well as what Brock Purdy's doing, but I don't give me any quarterback who started week 1 this year and put them as a starter for the 49ers, and they go to the playoffs. If the team is loaded.
That's a good example of, if Tom Brady were to be stuck in there, they're Super Bowl favorites, just like that.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah. They have a defense, they have a line, they have an offensive line that could protect them, and they have weapons, they have run game. Yeah. That kind of situation is what a 46-year-old quarterback like Tom Brady could actually succeed in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
All right, a couple more things. We'll get wrapped up here. But, Jake, what is the one player? Who is the one player? It could be a player that's still alive in the playoffs now on a team or a player that's been knocked out. Who is the one player you want to see win a Super Bowl?
Oh, man, he already got out of the league. J.J. Watt.
J.J. Watt?
That's poor. Yeah, I feel bad that he didn't get one.
I have one, but I'll let you go, Jake.
No, go ahead. Well,
I think for me, it's Christian McCaffrey. I think he has been the most talented player on his team his whole career, and now he is one of several weapons. And I know that kind of maybe diminishes a little bit from some people, like the value that he has to the team. But he has been on the Panthers, who they've gotten close to getting to the wild card game a couple of times, but I don't think they've made the playoffs since he's been there. So they've had 4-13 seasons, 4-12, 6-10, etc. with him. He's finally on a team that's winning. Him winning will be really cool. He's a good player. I like him.
Yeah.
I think it'd be fun to see him win.
That's a good one.
So I'd like to see. Oh, go ahead, Jeff. You want to?
No. Go for it.
I'd like to see Keenan Allen get one.
Ooh.
I don't know if he will, but
not while he's with the Chargers.
Not.
He won't.
Poor guy. He's a stud. He's been playing for a long time. He's been him and Mike Evans. Well, Mike Evans went and got a Super Bowl, so never mind on that. But I look at him like Mike Evans. He's had a lot of really successful seasons in this league, and it just doesn't seem like he's ever going to get that ring. So,
well, Keenan Allen is on the long list of Charger players that have not won because they always underproduce. So that's the life of a Charger fan. So I would say mine's going to be a little obscure, and it's really this player I think is really underrated. Has been for a while. He's bounced a couple teams, but this year
I like Kirk Cousins too. Yeah,
right. This year he kind of showed he's a little more integral part of the team he's on this year. And he really showed what it takes to he has talent, but it's not the top level talent, but he's really he does everything he needs to. And that's Jerick McKinnon with Kansas City. I would love to see him get a ring.
Oh, yeah.
He was talented when he was with the Vikings. I think he backed up Adrian Peterson. He also then backed up Dalvin Cook. He got injured when he got traded to the Niners. The year the Niners won the Super Bowl, and I think he was on IR that whole year because he had ACL tear, and then he got traded to the Chiefs the year after they won the Super Bowl, and he's been with them since for a few years, and he just showed this year what he's able to do with the offense, taking over that pass catching work that Clyde Edwards-Helaire was doing, but just being that guy on third down, on 2-minute drills, on whatever it is, and just showing what he's able to do. So he'd be my guy. So a little more obscure.
Yeah.
All right. One team that
he's put in work for the Chiefs. He's put in work for the Chiefs big time.
Yeah. I kind of hope they keep him around just because he can help show Pacheco what it means to, be that back to pick up blitzes. Because that's the reason he got more playing time is because Pacheco was just not ready. You just watch. Pacheco's in on a blitz or third down, on a pass catching down. He does not play the position just quite like McKinnon does. It shows.
Right.
Because I think, Jake, you and I were watching over Thanksgiving the Houston game where Pacheco just missed blitz block, a couple times where it's like, this is why McKinnon has such a big role because he doesn't miss that block.
Yeah, we were able to see both sides of it in that one game. We saw Pacheco miss a couple big blocks, and then we saw McKinnon block like a tight end. I mean, so he, it definitely shows the value, the difference between those two. But yeah.
Oh yeah, absolutely. All right, last question. We'll get out on this. One team that was the biggest miss that did not make the NFL playoffs. That should have made it, but did not. What was one team that did not make the NFL playoffs, but should have?
Rams? Yeah. I mean, all the signs pointed. They had the same roster, basically. I mean, they should have.
Yeah, that blew my mind.
They should have, at a minimum, been a wild card team. That was, I thought, that was the biggest miss.
Biggest miss. I mean, they had injury after injury after injury, too. That derails the season for them, so I get that. Jake, one team.
Yeah. I mean, I never thought they'd go very far, but honestly, Denver, I kind of thought Denver was going to at least get a wild card spot or something at the beginning of the season.
Russ cooked meth, that's for sure.
They let him cook all right.
That's what he cooked this season.
They let him cook all right.
He cooked
He burnt the whole damn meal.
He did. He burnt the whole meal.
He burnt the whole thing.
Well done steak for Mahomes with ketchup. That's what it was.
With ketchup.
Yeah. So, all right. I have to go, guys.
All right. Hey, thanks for jumping on.
Okay, Grant. We'll see you.
We'll see you all later.
Yeah. Thanks, Jake. Thanks, Jeff. See you guys.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
We'll
see you guys.
Everyone.